One of your problems, however, with the Americans was perhaps one which only you could resolve in your communication strategy. And you describe your discussion with Vice President Cheney, and you say how crossly, actually, the word you used is pissed off in your diary, how crossly he was when you said that when you talk about democracy coming to Iraq, your aim being democracy, people just say, well, that's Americanization, it's not democracy at all. How did you deal with that in the British domestic media?
That was at Camp David, where I mean, the real substance that day was the Prime Minister persuading Vice President Cheney to go along with the President and his subsequent visit to the United Nations, taking down that route. But there was then this broader discussion where, and again, I think out of a genuine sense of, I don't think it hurt, but I think they were quite, because after September the 11th, the whole world loved America for a while. And I can remember the Prime Minister saying, to Putin at the exchange that we referred to earlier, saying that, look, for the rest of the world, September the 11th was a massive event and a massive moment, but it passed. For the Americans, it's not going to pass. It's now part of their psychology. So they couldn't really understand why there was so much of this kind of anti-Americanism. So we had, I thought, quite a serious and discussion about, and we were giving them our assessment of what it was about. For example, I believe this strongly. I think that it's about the fact that people have grown up on the idea of these two poles, Russia, the Soviet Union and America, two great superpowers. You know, they can both sort of battle it to the death, but that's the sort of geopolitical framework. Suddenly you've only got one superpower, and the other countries are looking at them saying, OK, you've got the power, but we want you to understand that that means engaging us and involving us as well. So I think that's... So we were having that sort of discussion, and I just made an observation that I felt in their communications that when they talked about we're going to spread democracy, the message, back to the point about how a message in America or Britain might be heard in a totally different way in the Middle East or the Gulf, they're hearing that they're talking about America. They want to bring America here. And he was, as you so eloquently put it, he looked a bit pissed off.
Now, you also expressed your concerns at different times that for the British public there was a feeling, sometimes a very strong feeling, that Britain was only embarking on this course of action with the United States, one, because it was what the Americans want us to do, and of course to protect our relationship with the United States. How were you able to establish that there was a specific British agenda with regard to Iraq, and what was that agenda?
With difficulty, because once I mean, this was the, in a sense, the problem with the whole attempt to communicate on this, because you had, I guess, if I can put it in this term, the left of our media that basically just was opposed to the whole thing and very aggressively ran the kind of, you know, Blair is Bush's poodle line. Now there's a political hit in that, and on the right, I think a sense that I don't know that once you got into the dossiers and that kind of thing, and the BBC became very, very hostile in its coverage of Iraq, it was quite difficult to get out any messages undiluted on your terms, as it were, other than through just the Prime Minister getting out there and talking. But it was difficult. It was very, very difficult, and the sense of all you can do in the end, all the Prime Minister could do and the ministers could do was get out there and explain, look, we're not doing this because George Bush wants us to do it, we're doing this because we think it's in the British national interest.
There was going to be a problem at some point if the matter was to go before Parliament. It would have, of course, to have parliamentary support, and this would depend on some groundswell of public support. At the end of 2002, you proposed a more active strategy, and one in which you wanted the Prime Minister to become even more actively involved. Can you give us some indication of what that was, and in particular what it involved the Prime Minister as having to do?
I mean, by that time, I couldn't tell you what proportion of his time this was taking up, but it was considerable, obviously, and I think he accepted and the Americans, I think, also realised that there was a benefit to their communications, in a sense, from Tony Blair being very proactive in terms of communicating the issues, the background to the issues, and the case that we were trying to make. So it really just involved him having a pretty regular, sustained set of activities around set-piece speeches, visits, interviews, press conferences, and so forth.
And how did you assess the effectiveness of this heightened strategy?
I think you can, in the end, I think you have to rely on instinct to a large extent. I mean, we didn't do, I don't know whether within the government any polling was being done. I didn't see any, as it were, other than the published public opinion polls. But my sense was, as the debate went on, and this often is the case, that in these really difficult, ongoing, quite long debates, there's always a period at which you sense deeper public engagement in them, reflection upon them. I mean, it's now sort of routinely stated that there was massive opposition and hostility. It's true that there was opposition and hostility. There was also a considerable amount of support for the government's position, and I think there still is, but it just doesn't get much airtime.
Right. In the work that you did on presentation and communication, and I know this is a topic that you were concerned with, how did you assess and how did you deal with the relative impact on the public mind of the threats of weapons of mass destruction, where at one point you said there was word fatigue in the public mind on WMD, and on the other hand, what you call the unrivaled barbarity of Saddam's regime itself. What was the balance between these two?
I think they went together all the time. It's why, yes, it's true that when if you actually look at what is in 1441 and the arguments that the Prime Minister was putting at the time, it was about disarming Saddam Hussein of his weapons of mass destruction. But it's right linked into that are two other issues. One is the transatlantic relationship and the importance of preserving and maintaining that, and secondly, the history of the regime. That was an important part of the communications, because I think people have short memories, and you have to just keep reminding people that when we just talk about the Iran-Iraq war and we say 1 million casualties, you have to, people hear that, and then you have to kind of find ways of saying, well, listen. So rather than just saying that, you might look for a list of all the towns that have a population of 1 million people, and that might then people go, oh yeah, forgotten about that. Halabja, it's just, I think, one of those incidents that's the impact at the time was profound. But now you say Halabja, people, oh yeah, Saddam chemical weapons, yeah, I remember that. But so in a sense that you're trying to get over to people that when we say these things, Iran-Iraq war, annexation of Kuwait, the death squads, the intimidation, the taking the tongues out of people who speak against the regime, it's worth listening to some of that. It's worth understanding that is why the Prime Minister is so concerned about this regime. A regime that if it's used chemical weapons before, wants to stop him doing it again, particularly if the United Nations walks away from this.
And were enough people listening? Were you getting any sense that you were making headway?
I think, look, in the end, we're all we're just people. When you talk about public opinion, that just means what do people think? And we all think different things. No two people think alike about every issue. But I certainly had a sense. I can remember, for example, the day of the debate itself. I think more than any other debate, specific parliamentary debate, you just got so many messages from people, not necessarily in the political circle. You had a sense of the country following that debate as it unfolded. I never forget. I mean, sometimes I used to run to work, and sometimes I used to get the 24 bus, and I can remember listening to a conversation of two women on a bus about Resolution 1441. On their way to, they were quite elderly women. They were talking about what resolution, and I thought people are engaging on this now on a deeper level. It's gone beyond the kind of flim-flam that really represents a lot of what passes for debate in the media today. People were engaged. They were engaged in the debate.